Welcome to the West of North London podcast, where we sit down each and every week to answer your big European Super League questions. I'm Caleb.
And I'm Tim.
I threw a curveball in there for you.
Yeah.
Give you a little hint as to what this week's episode is going to be all about.
I mean, we have something to talk about this week? Did something happen like in the last couple of days?
Well, Arsenal drew 1-1 with Fulham. I don't know if you caught that. But that is burying the lead.
You mean that exciting game, that 1-1 game?
Yeah, we might talk about that later, but we got plenty else of other things to talk about right now, and we'll delve into all your ESL questions. Well, we'll try to answer questions that you didn't even ask because we've got lots to say. In the immediate though, let's talk about beers and drinks and alcohol, because we all need a drink after a day like today.
Yeah, seriously, like, being glued to the news all day today was very intense, and it really felt like a developing situation the whole day. So yeah, a beer sounds good.
Yes.
What are you drinking, Caleb?
Nothing I haven't drank before. Nothing's unique this week. Just the Medianoche IPA here. Going back to that one. It's more of a I think the percentage is 6.4, so it's on the lighter end, I guess, of an IPA. So
I like your definition of lighter end. Coming from a more Pilsner lighter beer drinking thing, 6%, that sounds high to me. So
that's perfect spot. I love 6%. I can drink a couple of those and feel okay. What are you drinking this week?
Well, I'm drinking. Oh, have to actually show the label. It's Kolshin, the blueberry apero. I know you are not the biggest fan of fruit beer, but this is a nice light fruit beer. Has blueberry flavor from Kolshin, which is just for me down the street, which is awesome. Takes me 5 minutes to walk to their brewery, and yeah, it's good. Comes in at a whopping 4.9%, which I know.
It's a session beer.
Well, the idea, they call it a very crushable beer. It's super light, very much more flavor forward than it is beer forward. But yeah, it's fine. Okay. I like it. I like a good fruit beer, especially the weather's been just so nice up here, where it's been sunny days and chilling out on the porch in the sun.
Yeah, I need to stock up on some more drinkable beers, I guess, since it's gonna. Well, we had like a fake summer, fake nice spring that'll probably disappear and never come back until like July.
Yeah, I mean, we're guaranteed about 4 weeks of rain now.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. We've sold our souls for a week of sun, and now it's back to rain.
The Northwest.
So we've got a question from you this week. Our usual Tim's question of the week. Is that the name of it?
It is. I've been trying to come up with a clever name now for more than a year, and I just don't have anything clever. Like, nothing pops out. I mean, if you, the listener and or viewer, have a great name for this, please let me know. Please let us know, because I think it deserves better than Tim's question of the week. It really does.
I don't know if we have any Canadian listeners. This is going to be a truly Canadian reference.
Oh, I'm ready for this.
So at Tim Hortons, for all you big donut fans out there, instead of donut holes, they have Timbits.
Oh, I'm okay with that, actually. I think that might be the new.
Although I don't know if I want Big Donut coming after us for some sort of copyright infringement.
If we get on the radar of Tim Hortons and get sued, I think we've made it.
We've made it in the world. Forget Duncan. We're being hunted down by Tim Hortons.
I like the idea of Big Donut, like the general idea of like this evil donut cartel setting up breakaway donut leagues, and yeah.
I like it. All right, so your Timbit this week.
It's never going to get old. Yeah. Anyways, my Timbit for the week is and this is coming from a place of we're going to get into it, and I'm not a very big fan of the Super League. But if you had to pick your ideal Super League, who would be in it? Because when I was looking at it, I'm like, I wouldn't want to play half these teams in a league, anyways. Like, I have a much different league. I think I'd want to play if I was like kind of stuck on a desert island with 12 other teams. Who would you keep and who would you have in your league?
Hmm. Well, I mean, the majority of the league was teams we already play a couple times a year or more, so took the fun out of it already. Um, but thinking of other leagues and teams that weren't represented here, I guess I'd want to have Ajax in there. I would like some Dutch representation, and really there's no Bundesliga teams, so I think having a Dortmund or Munich, Bayern Munich would be ideal in any sort of Super League. Um, and gosh, I guess I would do like a Monaco or a PSG just to have some French. You have to have more French representation here, so um, yeah, I guess just having more German, French, and Dutch involvement rather than just Italy, England, Spain here.
So you're going the more economic or ecumenical route with it, trying to get representation from all the bigger leagues.
Yeah, I don't. We'll get into this. I don't know how
Yeah.
much I care about playing the biggest teams all the time. Like,
Yeah, I mean, as I said, or as you said, we're going to get into it. But like, for me, like, if we're talking about Italy, I'd rather be playing like the Atalanta, Napoli's of the world right now than the Milans or the Juventus. I mean, I when I actually watch the Champions League, that's not Arsenal or anything. I tend to gravitate to watching Napoli or Atlanta over any of the other, like basically any of the other teams in the Super League,
mhm,
because both those teams, like at least with Napoli, you have in normal times a great stadium and fun fans to watch, plus some great players, and then Atlanta has been one of the most exciting teams in Europe over the last 4 years. So I'd love watching those games. And then I'd put in. I always enjoy seeing Dinamo Zagreb. Some of these Eastern European teams would be fun. Maybe I'm a soccer snob, but I tend to actually like playing against these kind of more obscure teams from smaller leagues. I mean,
you really
I
just want to
also
stay in Europa League, is what you're saying.
yeah. I, if you actually want to, if you held a gun to my head, I love the Europa League for the matchups it brings. I do follow the Swedish league, so I have a soft spot for smaller teams and smaller leagues because I think there's much more of a story. It's much more exciting because when you, and as we'll get in later in the discussion, when you start playing these teams over and over and over again, you know what you're going to get. You know the players. You know the game that's going to happen.
Hmm.
Whereas, like, if you play one of these smaller upstart teams, you can get some fun results and some fun soccer. And like, there's just great stories of redemption and struggle and like what you really enjoy about soccer from playing some of these teams.
Yeah, I like the little guys. The opportunity for small teams to do big things. So yeah, getting to play some of those upstart teams makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Shall we get into the meat and potatoes of today's episode?
Yeah. Speaking of the upstart teams and the smaller teams, what did you think about this announcement there, Caleb? The Super League.
So let's let's backtrack to Sunday, because that's really when this kicked off. It was a whirlwind of 24 hours, really, which is crazy to think that this has um, it's been insane for 2 days. Really, that's it. It came out late on Sunday night that this rumored Super League that had been, I guess, developing in the background for a while. We'd heard rumblings of some sort of Super League coming together with the world's best teams, and they were going to try to rival or supplant the Champions League. And the announcement that it or the transition from this could happen to this is happening seemed to go pretty quick, even though we'd been hearing about it for a little while. It was like we'd kind of been hearing about it developing, and then it went to, oh, this is imminent, to, oh, this is announced, like, very quickly. And so I almost didn't believe it at first. I it was too big and too quick to be believed. What was your gut reaction when you first heard about it?
Well, and so it broke late Sunday in Europe, and it was about mid afternoon Sunday here in the U.S. And
Mhm.
I have started be trying to go back to one of a bar to watch soccer on Sundays with a friend of mine. So I was actually watching a Bundesliga game
Mhm.
when I saw this kind of come up on my phone. And for as long as I've been following soccer, like the big clubs have all been you know bandying around this idea of the Super League or the Big Eight League or whatever. It's Real Madrid has been talking about it since like 2008 and beyond, like, and it's always been a bargaining point. And I know that like the contract is coming up for the TV for the rights for the UCL, so I figured it was another like haha, like we're trying to like just do bargaining rights. But it wasn't until really yesterday when I woke up and I saw that like, oh wait, like this is real. Like there are actually like signatures, there's a contract, there's you know a real plan, and they're actually trying to start a league. And my first initial reaction is like, this is gonna fail. Like there's so much at stake. And then you see and especially once you saw the reaction from FIFA and the uh, UEFA and from the Premier League, I'm like, there's just no way this can hold together. And it's been crazy since then.
Yeah, I would say the instant reaction from the majority of people I follow and saw online was pretty, I would say 99% negative. I did not see a lot of people speaking positively about this. Um, the timing of it was set to kind of steal the thunder of the updated Champions League um, that they were planning on rolling out Monday. And so this was kind of trying to beat them to the punch. And the thing that really made it real was the teams that were announced and saying that they were founding members. Um, so the teams we're talking about here, supposedly 12 of the best teams in the world, uh, starting with Arsenal, of course,
Yes, best team in the
best
world.
in the world. Then Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City, Man United, Tottenham, um, Inter Milan, Juventus, AC Milan, Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, Real Madrid. So the usual suspects minus some big names that were either invited behind the scenes and hadn't signed on yet, or were left out of the negotiating altogether. Hard to say, but you see
Well, I
some
mean,
big exclusions there as well.
well, and specifically with the Bundesliga teams, they were actually offered and very much
Mm-hmm.
declined. And I think it's very noticeable that you have with the Bundesliga, you have the 50 plus 1% ownership, which is the fans own 50% of the club plus one vote, and they are the clubs that instantly just said no to it. And so I think it's a very important fact to this, that the clubs that are in it are the ones that are have a very specific ownership structure, and have an ownership structure that it tends to be from American owners, which is a whole other interesting side of
Or
this.
in way over their heads. Like you look at the Real Madrids and Barcelonas, they are unsustainable based on their size and their leagues, and it's they've outgrown their sustainability basically. Like they cannot make enough money to pay all the players that they have or
I mean, like
redo
for me,
stadiums and such.
Well, I mean, for me, it's like to get into that. Like with, so I mean, Madrid has been one of the big. Florentino Perez is a horrible person and is like a parasite to soccer. I'm just going to put
One
that
of
out right
many.
now.
Let's
One
not
of many.
let's not cut this down too finely. I mean,
No, I mean, there's a lot of villains in the
uh-huh.
story. There's a lot of villains in soccer, but I one of many. But Florentino Perez is an absolutely horrible person. Like just straight up is bad for soccer, and I have very little sympathy for both uh, Barcelona and Madrid as far as like getting too big for their britches and that sort of thing because they don't have to. What what this has really shown is that these teams are spending in an unsustainable manner, and they have to like literally destroy the fabric of soccer in order to try and get back to balanced
Hmm.
sheets. You know, and instead of looking internally and going, what can we do as a club to actually get back to a reality, they're like just trying to just destroy everything just to make sure they're monetizing everything.
Yeah, I don't want to go into like how broken Barcelona is because I don't know the ins and outs of all of that, but you can see from the outside they have a lot of talent. Same with Real Madrid. They tend to collect talent that they don't necessarily need. Um, and whenever there's a big player on the market, those are two teams that are always in the running. You talk about Mbappe, you talk about Holland, you talk about whoever is the hot young player, they're always going to get linked to Real Madrid and Barcelona almost, and maybe Bayern Munich, who isn't in this group, but if their ownership was structured differently, they would um, they would be in this group, and they are another one of those super clubs that spends exorbitantly to keep a competitive edge in leagues that they don't need to. I mean, honestly, uh, the three Spanish teams are always going to be vying for the top spot in Spain, and they don't have to try as hard as they do to maintain that. That what they're really spending to do is compete in the world stage in the Champions League. So I think there's um, when you look at how much money has to go into staying competitive with the biggest teams in the world and stay competitive in Champions League, I can understand a little bit why you look at that and say, well, if we're going to cut costs, the only way we can do that is if we know we're going to have that Champions League money every year. And we can then work our way backwards and say, okay, we don't need to spend this much money to stay competitive because we don't have to be competitive at that point. We're in guaranteed. We will.
But I mean, that,
It's crazy, but I mean, I kind of think there's that backwards way of thinking of like, if only we could guarantee ourselves this level of money, then we don't have to worry about being competitive. We can just pocket the difference.
I mean, I think everyone in the world would feel that way. Like, hey, if like I'm Colchester United, if only I didn't have to be competitive, I didn't have to worry about being better. I firmly blame the clubs, and this includes Arsenal. Let's not beat around the bush. And like, I know it's an uncomfortable thing for us as Arsenal fans to talk about, but I'm including Arsenal and specifically the Cronkies in this. But all of these clubs are participating in this arms race to be uber competitive on the field, so they're overpaying for players. And then this is the final thing is like, then they come back to us like, oh, we're so poor. It's because you've been spending money you don't have. And Juventus is I know I've spoken about Juventus's financial problems on this podcast before, which is they couldn't afford Ronaldo when they bought him, and then you have a global pandemic, and Juventus is in a very serious spot right now where they have players, they have a lot of good players on their team that they can't afford. And that's one of the reasons I think this kind of came to a head is you have a lot of teams, including Arsenal, that have a lot of players that they can't afford, a lot of contracts that they haven't afford. They've been writing checks. And when you're in a pre-pandemic world and everything's fluffy and nice, you don't see the stress cracks. But when an actual crisis happens, then you start to see the teams that aren't financially viable starting to stress and crack. And I think this is as much a money grab out of necessity than it is like this culmination of an evil plan.
Yeah, this kind of goes back to bailing out big businesses in general, because we've seen that come up time and time again where businesses, um, you know, big corporations like the automotive industry, the airline industry, housing, whatever it is, these too big to fail sectors get into a pinch because they think they can continue to write these checks and not have to deal with repercussions as long as their stock prices are continuing to go up. But then the economy gets pulled out from under them, and all of a sudden, all those bad decisions come home to roost. Like you've run your business poorly, but have been able to paper over the cracks by maintaining this positive outlook, by maintaining this veneer of success, even though when you actually look at the books, you've been making poor decisions over and over again. And I get so frustrated when the government or employees or consumers are asked to foot the bill for their mistakes. It infuriates me because we as individuals are told to save for a rainy day. Like if you lose your job, you should have a year's worth of savings or whatever. It's really difficult as an individual to do that a lot of times, especially when you've got extenuating circumstances like a pandemic. It becomes very difficult to do that sort of thing, let alone keep a job and all that. But I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, but we as individuals have way different expectations than these huge corporations who think we're going to come to rescue them. Like we're just going to follow them wherever they go. Whatever they do, we're just going to be there to back our teams. It is insane the way that they rolled this out, thinking we'll just put this out there. The best teams will show up. Everybody will be on board because the best teams are on board. Everybody loves the best teams. But we're not even going to hide the fact that this is a blatant money grab. There was um, at no point did they even try to frame this as we're going to improve on the Champions League format. We're going to bring in the best referees in the world. We're going to improve on VAR. We're going to make sure that players are compensated fairly in addition to what they would normally make in the leagues, or like anything to make it seem like a better deal or something better for viewers, for fans. Nothing, not a bit. It's insane that was their idea coming into this.
It's a thing that like really just pisses me off the most is the fact that they didn't consult the fans. I mean, I think they
They didn't
didn't
even
consult the
consult the
fans because they
players.
specifically
Like, that's insane in
well
itself.
they knew what the answer was going to be. No one wanted this, but and to be fair, it isn't the clubs themselves. Like really, like I saw a great thing on Sky Sports where they're talking about it's not the clubs. Like it's not Jurgen Klopp or any of these. I mean, I think Mourinho might have been for it before he got fired, uh, but I I think it's about 12 to 15 owners of clubs that really wanted to push this through and really didn't give a fuck what, excuse my French if we don't have
Fire away.
these
Fire away.
all right, but just didn't care about the what we as fans thought because they just figured we put it through, fans will get mad for about 30 seconds and forget about it and move on, and not realizing that this digs so much deeper than they think. And it goes back to, I've talked about the Cronkies. I'm going to move this a little bit more Arsenal specific because we are an Arsenal podcast, and I'm going to talk about the Cronkies, who the Cronkies I don't think understand sport, let alone soccer. I don't think they care about sport other than what it does to make them money. And you see it with how they dealt with the Rams here in the US and how they moved them from St. Louis to LA and really ripped out the heart of those fans and were so callous about it. Gave no fucks about it. Did not like sugarcoat or anything. They were just like, we're gonna move this team from St. Louis to LA. Fans are gonna follow us that do, others don't care. We're still gonna make our money. And I think they genuinely thought that that's what they could do here in the European Super League idea is we can do this fans are going to get mad, but they're not going to be able to do anything. But they just don't understand how it works in England, how it works in Europe, because they've never bothered to actually dig deeper. They give a lot of fan service about the history, da da da, but I guarantee you they don't know anything.
I don't think Cronky knows what our uniform looks like. I mean, he would not.
Yeah.
Josh might know. Stan certainly does not know. I mean, it is fans are numbers. You know, fans are things to extract from and not put into. You know, like you don't invest in fans. Fans don't give you don't grow. They're only able to give you so much money. Uh, you know, you just try to get more and more of those. You know, um, the idea that any of this was done for the fans, um, yeah,
As an Arsenal fan, what was any benefit you could see out of this change?
it's different as an Arsenal fan, and in some ways I get this, and in many ways I don't, but I understand that this was a lifeline, and to me, Arsenal's involvement at all really just stunk of desperation because they were not willing to spend the money to do it the right way, to get to the Champions League, to invest in the club and do what it takes to be at that upper tier. You know, if you want to play with the big boys, you have to spend like the big boys. This was a shortcut to getting that money simply by showing up. Like, you don't have to have a good team. You just have to be in this league. And you're a guaranteed spot as a founder to get 20 years or something of guaranteed income. Doesn't matter what kind of team you field. So you don't have to invest in the team. I mean, it might look better and you might draw more ratings if you have competitive teams in the Super League, but there's no, I mean, there's no I'm sure there's no clause that says if you field a bad team, we're going to kick you out of this thing. I just see it going way downhill. Even with that money is not going back into the team. What's the point? Why would you? Um, but I think yeah, it is a losing proposition to continue the way we're going. It is kind of a shit or get off the pot time for the Cronkies because if they if they don't make the Champions League, if they don't make Europa League this year, um, so no European soccer, you are in the red already, and you're going to continue to go that direction without significant investment. And they're already taking out loans and such to try to keep things going. Um, it feels like they have one foot out the door, and I would love to see that other foot follow. But we can talk about that more. But I for Arsenal, for Tottenham, like they didn't belong to be in this conversation. They didn't belong in this conversation at all. But you can absolutely see why they couldn't not be involved if they were invited because they they need the money. I mean, Tottenham's in the same boat that we were a few years back, trying to pay off a new stadium. Like it is crunch time, and you've got the same sort of pressure on every one of these English teams because everybody struggles a little bit to make ends meet right now. But the reality is they don't. This is a money grab. I mean, this is trying to line the pockets. It's not trying to keep these teams afloat. These teams aren't going away. Um, I it's at the end of the day, it's just callous and disrespectful to everybody that watches the sport. We were never considered.
No, and you talk about Arsenal needs the money, and I don't think Arsenal needs the money. I think the Cronkies need the money. Very, or not even need the money. That's the other thing is I don't think the Cronkies have gone bankrupt
No,
in this
no.
pandemic by any means. And I think for me, it was one of the most embarrassing things I've ever had to deal with as an Arsenal fan. I grew up under Arsene Wenger, as a lot of people have. I've been watching Arsenal for more than 30 years. I mean, it shows you how old I am, right? And I've seen some horrible losses. I've seen some horrible losses to Tottenham. I've been embarrassed by countless games. But on the anytime that happened, and anytime like Fabregas left for Barcelona, and that was pride, like your pride. I always had the inner faith of, well, Arsenal is a different team. We do it differently. Wenger said there's a way to win, and there's the Arsenal way. And I got that on my 13th birthday card. like, you know, uh, and we've talked about this. Like, why are we Arsenal fans? And whenever we have a new guest on, we always have this like conversation of how did we fall into love with this team? Why do we follow this team? And we have this general view that we were different.
Mm-hmm.
You know that there was the Arsenal way. There isn't that difference anymore in my mind. I don't think, because of where we're running. I think the club is different. I think the fans and the the a lot of this playing staff, a lot of the staff behind the scenes, the cooks, the people that turn the club over day to day. But as far as club culture over the last 5 years, there isn't that different, and this just shows it. And it's embarrassing. Like, I mean, I thank God. I don't thank God. It sounds very cynical of me to say it and very self-serving, but like, at least Liverpool and Tottenham were involved in this as well, so that there isn't a lot of moral high ground with some of these other clubs that you know can hold it over. So, like, could you imagine if Tottenham wasn't involved in this? The
Right.
the amount of banter being thrown our way. But still, like, just in casual conversations, I have friends who are Everton fans. I have a bunch of friends who are West Ham fans, and especially West Ham fans who are earning their spot in the Champions League right now. They have no respect left for Arsenal, and why
Yeah.
should they? Like, what can I say that is like, hey, like, you can say like maybe we were following along, but I actually don't think so. I think this was really done by these American owners, because you look at the clubs that were the last to drop off. Arsenal was one of the
Mm-hmm.
last to drop off of this, and it was Juventus who's American owners. You have American owners throughout this. I think I could go through in my head, but I believe a majority, if not a vast majority, of these clubs that were in this were American sports owners trying to push the Super League on. And I think the Cronkies were very much involved in this. If not, I don't think they were just like, well, we had to join, which is what I think their statement was
Mm-hmm.
trying to like portray as. I think they were involved in organizing this, and then they just got their hand caught in the cookie jar. And and it looks like it's not going to happen. It looks like it's all falling apart around everybody's head. And we can probably discuss a little bit further what this means going forward. But it's a stain that's never going to come off the club, or it's going to take quite a long time for it to come off
I
the
think the
club.
stain on the club is the Cronkies. I mean, honestly, that if I don't, like you said, I don't hold the staff, I don't hold the players, I don't hold the coaches responsible for this. It comes down to, I mean, I don't even know if I could throw the entire board under the bus either. I mean, it's the chief executive and the ownership. I think that you have to hold responsible. I wouldn't put like Edu in that group as the technical director. I don't think that's a decision that would fall to him by any means. He's soccer side. Clearly, that was how that was delineated when they redid the management structure. So um, this is operations. This is ownership level stuff. Um, this. I guess I have a hard time believing though that if anybody else were to um, own Arsenal were to come in and have this presented to them, it'd be really tough to turn it down, I think.
Clubs did, though, and that's the thing, is like the German league clubs did, but that, again,
Yeah, I
that's
think
because
that
the
that had a
ownership is
lot
the
more to do with
fans.
it than
And
anything
I think,
else.
and, and there is
Yeah.
reports that PSG turned it down, and that Porto, like, I mean, the president of Porto, you can trust as far as you can throw him, but he said he was offered and he turned it down as well. That there are people that were presented. I mean, an interesting dichotomy that I was reading about was the teams that turned it down, besides the German teams and the teams that were first to leave, were the teams that were using their ownership as sports washing. It's easy for Roman Abramovich and for Man City to wash their hands of this because they're
Mm,
not trying to make a profit. They're not running it as a business. They're using it to sports wash their identity or their country. Whereas with Arsenal, Liverpool, Man United,
mm-hmm.
Spurs, they're trying to make a profit, and it's a very different way of going on. So PSG is another one where they're not trying to PSG isn't trying to make a profit. They don't care. They're just there to invest big money and people to forget that there's horrible things
Mm-hmm.
going on in their countries. You know,
Yeah, it's really, it just seems crazy looking back on it how half baked this whole idea was from the get go, how it was presented, and even coming in with 12 out of 20 teams and expecting to just you know find they needed another three teams plus the sign off of the different federations to allow the other five slots to be filled by winners of leagues, or they didn't even come up with a method to fill those last five slots like that. They didn't even have that all hashed out yet. um it, it's really, it was like, these are business people. These are people who run multiple other sports teams, who run other businesses. They should really know better. It was very, very
I
stupid for the level of like they literally just had to ignore a lot of people to make this happen. Like, it feels so rushed.
Well, I read a great quote from Raphael Hogenstein, who, if you don't read his blog or have read any of his book, definitely check him out. Tor is a great book about the history of German soccer. But Raphael Hogenstein was interviewing someone, and I forget who he's interviewing, but the guy was saying, you would be surprised how idiotic some of these uh, owners are when you get behind the scenes. That they put on a veneer essentially of pretending they know what they're doing, but when you get past the veneer, they have no idea what's going on. They have no idea what is actually smart business. They just, they take over these. A lot of them tend to be
Mm,
sons of successful businessmen rather than the actual successful businessmen themselves. It's a bunch of older, aging white men who've been from privilege, who've been given this play toy and think they know what they're doing. And then suddenly, when they don't get their way, freak out and get confused of why
yeah,
it didn't happen. You
yeah,
know,
it felt very tone deaf, and honestly, I think there was some level of shock with the response, because it was not just fans. It was other teams. It was UEFA. It was FIFA. It was governments. I mean, the UK government was ready to throw the book at him, and ready to do whatever it took to keep these teams in the domestic leagues. And I don't know what that would have amounted to, but the threats were there,
well,
and I'm sure it played a role in waking up some of these teams. Like, oh my God, this is serious. This actually has an effect on the local economies. This has an effect on the way that this plays out for the leagues that we are involved in. It just seemed like it never dawned on them.
well, I mean, I think it's crazy. I think again, it comes from the ownership being so disconnected
Mm-hmm.
from where the actual clubs are based that they don't understand that the UK government does have a role. Because I mean, if this happened, I always look at this. If this happened in the US, I don't think the US government would get involved at all, or even like if this was like there's a breakaway league from the NFL. I don't like no one would like bat an eye or like from the government side of things, no one would care. But because this goes back into the fabric of what England is and that it goes into the country, like, and I think the ownership, including the Cronkies, just didn't appreciate that. And I think going forward, we might be reaping some of the. I think it's going to actually be benefits. I think there's going to be a lot harder scrutiny in the United Kingdom about football or soccer clubs. There's always already been a crisis in the lower leagues where there's been several teams that have been bought out by owners, mismanaged, and basically run to the ground. and the conservative government, one of the platform was creating a government inquiry into uh, football governance, soccer governance. So that was already a platform that they were going to put in after the whole Brexit
Mm.
thing sorted itself out. And then there was a lot of talk, like the first stages they were talking about were like just literally just revoking police presence at games, literally revoking licenses for or work permits. Like there's a lot of things the English government can do that would really impact these clubs. But also there's a lot of talk that the English government might be looking into doing the 50+1 rule, which I'd 100% be in favor of, which is just taking away single entity ownership and putting the club back into the fans'
Can they
hands.
though? It seems far fetched to
I
me
mean,
to have the. I mean, again, it's not the U.S. government, so I don't really know how that would play out. But it seems a little bit difficult to suddenly change the ownership structure of 20 teams, 20 plus teams, because you're talking about all of Europe or all of English soccer at that point, all levels. You'd be looking at making sure that the fans had an ownership piece, a majority piece. That's a big switch. I mean, I don't know how that played out in Germany, um, but I do like for the Sounders. That was how they were found, like how it started. At least when they came to the MLS level, that was established. And I don't know how you go in and do that midway through a league.
no, I mean with the sound, I mean the Sounders, it was a little bit different. Like they had this idea of democracy in sport, which was based off of
Hmm.
kind of a European model of sport, but you never had the
Right.
actual investment in the ownership group side of things. Germany is a very long story that I could get into. It could be an Uncle Tim story time
We've
for
got a
another
whole off
day,
season of
or you could
episodes we
read
have to fill.
Tor.
So,
You could also read Tor by Raphael Hagenstein, which is a great history of German soccer. Highly recommend it. Very readable. Uh, but I mean, essentially, it's not illegal under EU law for them to do that,
they're not in the EU.
and
They can do whatever they
it
want, I
would.
guess.
No, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess that does. But I mean, so there it could be possible. It's obviously a long shot
Mm,
and may not be feasible, but the English government is definitely looking into curbs. And even if you can't legislate it, there are definitely ways to pressure it. And especially with some of the business being foreign owned businesses, they have a lot more leeway
mm.
with what you can do politically. And that is and then the Premier League has ways of dealing with things with licensing and all that sort of thing. If there's a will within the Premier League to deal with this, and I think that for me is the scariest outcome of all this is what it means for
Right.
Arsenal going forward. Which is, I think there's going to be repercussions. I think there's just going to straight up be repercussions, whether it's points deductions. I mean, there's been things bandied about everywhere from being kicked out
Mm.
of Europa League to points deductions to anything. I don't know if it's going to be that serious, but I think even just in soft power and not necessarily specific things, there's just going to be repercussions throughout the
It's a
years.
weird thing because the reports were saying that UEFA spent a good chunk of money to pay these teams to come back to the Premier League, to come back into the fold and rejoin the Champions League plan. And if they're willing to pay them to come back, how much leverage do they have to actually punish them? You can't pay a team like you're willing to pay them exorbitant amounts of
I
money
hadn't heard
to
that
bring them
report.
back, and then you're going to punish them on top of that. It's kind of like
I haven't seen anything about giving
I don't
actual
know if that
payments for
payment
them to
was
come
like
back.
paying their way
I'd be
out of the
interested.
contracts that they had signed, because it sounds like there's some significant fees involved, um, because the way that it was structured was like if all the teams had decided to dissolve the European Super League, then nobody would have had to pay anything. But because only a portion are leaving and the rest are kind of, um, I guess there's a handful of teams still that have not officially left because they've put a pause on it. They're going to restructure things and represent it. Um, that may be difficult to get the English teams back at this point, but maybe. But that aside, um, looking at the payment aside, what would you think is fair as far as punishment goes?
It's hard for me to actually be partisan about this because from my Arsenal side, I don't want any punishment. I love my team, and like I, in a certain way, it's fundamentally unfair for the fans and the players to be punished because
Hmm.
Kroenke is an asshole. I think that it sucks. Um, if it wasn't, if this was just Tottenham, if this was like other teams, when I look at it, I'm very upset about it. Like I think it's not just what they did, it's the amount of betrayal, the amount of two-sidedness, the amount of lying that they did to try and get this done, and the fact that like a lot of these chairman people involved from the with these discussions of ESL were involved in Premier League, finances and things like that, that it could have created some issues, and it probably is creating some issues right now as far as like what they know. They have sensitive information that they obviously can't be trusted. it, I don't know what a fair. I think there should be repercussions from like
Hmm.
just from a neutral standpoint, whether it be point deductions, maybe a suspension from European play for the next year or two. All things put aside, I think those are things that can happen. Uh, I know that the 14 other teams want blood, like they literally want absolute
But
blood, like and
consider
it's
this: you
crazy.
you know your UEFA was panicking and was willing to cough up huge amounts of money, assuming that that report is true. You know, if that's the case, are you if you ban these teams from playing in Europe in the next season, are you risking breaking the very thing you're trying to save? Because if you were to take them out of it and you let, you know, the rest of the teams that are still viable into the Champions League, maybe it's like a funny one-off where you've got West Ham and Leicester and all these teams in Champions League. Um, but if you're looking to get people excited about this new format and excited about Champions League and try to move forward from this incident, I think leaving out the biggest teams as a punishment kind of shoots yourself in the foot, especially when you're talking
Well,
about renegotiating television rights, because that's on the table as well too.
yeah, well, let's be honest. Really, I believe because of the tie, Chelsea's back into, or yeah, Chelsea is back into fourth place. But let's be honest. As of yesterday, Arsenal, Chelsea, four of the six English teams weren't in the Champions League, anyways.
Hmm.
You know,
But then
they're
banning them doesn't really have an
yeah,
effect anyway.
yeah, but you ban them from Europa. Like
True.
I think, and I'm not. I haven't, and I've been trying to keep a pulse on the reporting. I haven't seen any of the reports about the payment. What I have seen is that whatever. I think these 12 teams have lost a lot of bargaining power. They've shot themselves in the foot for that the TV deal in three for the next 3 years. Like they're not going to get any concessions on that because what are they going to do? Leave? They obviously shown that that can't happen. They've played their biggest trump card that they have now, right? They know that if they try and do this again, the fans aren't going to follow them. That's specifically what they know now, because the biggest people that were running the protests were people from the top teams.
Hmm.
I think if you're in a negotiating room, you don't have a lot of feet to stand on. I think, if the punishment goes crazy, if they relegate all the teams from the Premier League and things like that, you might see some weird reactions. But I think there's a lot of feeling of there's going to be some sort of punishment. I don't know what it's going to be, but I think there's a lot of feeling that amongst fans too, that of these teams, that I think I don't think anyone would really argue with some punishments. you know?
I think a lot of this stems from, financial fair play and um, the Man City incident with the suspected cheating, and um, a lot of these things get swept under the rug or ignored, or with financial fair play, just people just shrug, go, we tried to put some limitations on, we tried to rein in the money, but the reality is that these are symbolic gestures that don't really amount to much. And there is no reining in this money. There is no amount of punishment financially that you can. I mean, if they just decided, oh, we're just gonna throw some fines at these teams and call it a day and move on, because that would not shock me one bit to just have some token punishment thrown at these teams and try to get back to business as usual. Because at the end of the day, if these teams can't go make their money elsewhere, they're going to be putting a lot of pressure on UEFA to fix the system, as they say, and try to extract as much money out of the position that they're in. So if I still think they have leverage, they are still the draw. They UEFA needs them as much as they need steady income. So
Mhm.
I think there is desire from both sides to get as much out of this as they can. So if these teams can't get it elsewhere, they're going to have to try to figure out how to get as much out of Champions League, um, or whatever European tournament they come up with. Um, so I think there will be a desire to make it work for everybody, but there is, I think, as a gesture to the fans and as to the um, integrity of the game, there will be some sort of punishment put in place, but I don't think it's going to amount to much as far as actual impact on these teams.
And that's where it's like whether it's my cynical hat or my hopeful hat comes on.
Hmm.
I am actually really hopeful that there is going to be some sort of systematic change. I think there is a lot of talk of specifically some of these specific owners. Kroenke's name is definitely come around, and Glazer's names have come around. The Fenway Sport Group owners, I forget their name. They're all uh, really amongst the Premier League clubs. They don't want to deal with these people anymore, as like just like straight up don't want to deal with them.
Hmm.
And so there might be some leverage there, some changing. I mean, we've already seen, uh, you know, what's his name from Man United
Oh, Woodward.
getting Woodward losing his job. I don't think it's going to be the last person to lose their job. And Nelly from Juventus is there's large rumors that he's losing his job. Uh, I think there hopefully will be some movement. At the end of the day, too, we're also reaping the seeds of modern football, and it gets really depressing if I go down this road of modern football and what soccer has become over the last 30 years. I get really depressed, and it's really hard for me to get excited about soccer when I go down that road.
Mm.
And that's why, for me personally, not like I matter in the large scheme of things, it's been really a hard couple of days because it's frustrating and it's scary and it's depressing, and it makes me not interested at all. It makes me want to turn off.
So I'm going to ask you two big questions.
Hmm.
Um, what do you think this means for Arsenal as a team? And what do you think? How do you feel going forward as an Arsenal fan?
Um, the first question, I think it's going to be interesting. I think this we haven't talked anything about on field and soccer at all this episode, and we're almost an hour in.
Yeah.
I think our next game is going to be interesting in this backlight. You saw I watched the Liverpool game and the Chelsea game. Liverpool leads, Chelsea Brighton, and you could I don't know if it was the general malaise, but it really did feel like it was affecting the play on the field for those players. That the especially the Leeds team, who have been fighting and want to be in the Champions League. That's their ambition. They were playing harder against Chelsea. You could tell they wore the shirts that say "Earn It," while they were warming up. They you could tell that there was a little bit of this thing. And the players, I mean, the Liverpool players stood up after the game, or today actually, and put out a joint statement about how they thought this was horrible. So you can see from a player perspective that they don't, the players that are playing for these Super League teams are a little embarrassed by it, and it is a distraction. So I worry about that. From a player perspective, I'm hopeful that within the next like 3 days, hopefully before Friday's game, things have calmed down to a point where it's not a distraction anymore. Now it's just a footnote in history, instead of like almost a reality. But that's my worry. As an Arsenal fan, I mentioned it before. This is the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened. I, as I said, I've been following Arsenal for 30 years. I've been embarrassed by results on the field. I have been sad. One of my saddest moments is when we lost the Champions League. Like, again, in a story I won't go too far into, but it was one of my saddest days when we lost the Champions League final, leaving the George and the Dragon, hearing the cheering Barcelona fans. Uh, there's been very low points. I'm having a hard time thinking, like, when I'm talking to people, being like, I'm an Arsenal fan and really going with pride about it right now. And it it doesn't. I'm still going to do this. I'm still going to watch the games and everything. There's a wound that it's going to take a moment to heal, and this is just being honest. And I really don't care if people like think I'm a less of an Arsenal fan for it or whatever. This is just straight up what I'm feeling about it. It's going to take a moment to feel good about the team again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll speak to that first. I guess is the I tweeted something today, and I made a point to say, they like the team, because normally I would say we. I feel like because we are doing this every week. I watch every game. I rarely miss. I mean, since we started the podcast, I rarely missed it watching a game. I will watch everything. Um, and because of that, I felt like part of this team. Whether it's a very distant part. It is um, it is this idea that we were all pulling in the same direction and wanted the same things. And I think there's been a lot of decisions made over the last year or two, and really over the um, lifetime of this ownership, that has eroded that feeling of that feeling of this being something we're all in together. And it makes me want to say they, because I want to separate myself from these poor decisions. I don't have anything to do with them. I have no control over them, and they don't really have anything to do with me as a fan. They don't care about me as a fan. At the end of the day, if I'm not giving them money, I'm nothing to them. And I'm wearing my cheap Chinese Arsenal shirt because I don't want to give them any more money. I don't want to pay
Yeah.
them anything extra, because what they've put into the club is about what I want to put into the club. They put nothing in it, and I'm willing to show up and put in my spirit and my time, and that's as much as they're going to get out of me. But they have not earned my money, and they have not earned my additional um, anything extra. This is I follow the team, the players, the coach, and that's where I draw the line. Um, Anything else, like it has not been earned, and I will show them the same amount of respect as they've shown me.
Yeah, exactly. And like, it reminds me of one of my favorite Brian Schmetzer quotes when he talks about what is a soccer club. And a soccer club really is, where he says, where the teams meet the fans, where the players meet the fans. That is what a soccer club is, and everything else is just superstructure. It's just noise. And I think what happens is, when these owners, these mega millionaires, come in, they think when they buy the club that they own everything of the club. And what they don't realize is that they don't own everything, that there is a part of the club that they will never own. and unless that they work really hard at it, they're never going to understand. And you know, to this day, if Arsenal gets run into the ground by the Kroenkes, gets destroyed, there's a Phoenix Club that happens in like the fifth division. I'm still going to be an Arsenal fan and following that
Hmm.
club. And you know, as I said, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've seen players come and go. I've seen, you know, a manager or two come and go. Like, but the club is the thing that stays there, and it's the same thing with the owners. These people are going to come and go, and it just sucks that these owners don't understand how they are custodians of the club. And you know, I can go off on a tangent on modern football again, but you know, like, cool, you want to make a couple bucks, sure, whatever, but don't you have to realize that that profit or any gain that you get out of it comes secondary to being a custodian of the club. And if you can't do that, I just have no time of day.
Yeah, I think there has to be an understanding when you become an owner that you are playing a role. You are guiding something that already existed before you and will exist after you, and you are just a part of the history of that club. Whether you succeed or fail goes down in the history books, but the club will endure one way or the other.
Yeah, and I think the Kroenkes definitely have written a chapter of their story of the Arsenal of not being a hero in the story for Arsenal
Yeah,
fans.
I'll go back to the what does this mean for Arsenal? Friday is the Arsenal game this week, and there was going to be a big protest for or against the Super League before the game, and now that has become a Kroenke protest. And I think that there was pressure to get out before that is greatly intensified at this point because I think the fans know where they stand and where the team stands in the minds of the owners. Um, and I'm 110% into getting new ownership. I There's something to be said about the devil, but it just can't be that much worse. I mean, like somebody coming in surely will want to invest in this club more than the owners currently do.
I mean, at the end of the day, as long as they don't drag our team through the mud, I'd be okay. I mean, I think there's a part of me that's getting more and more used to the idea of Arsenal not being the same club it was, but only if we trade that the values of winning at all cost for being something more than just a team again, you know, more than some to believe in something again. I'm willing to trade quite a bit for that, and that's what I'm hopeful for. You know,
Well, the thing I really like and reference about Arteta quite frequently is that he understands Arsenal. He understands what it means to be an Arsenal player, to be an Arsenal fan, to be a custodian of the brand and everything else that goes into it. Um, I think the owner would hopefully share some of that. If it was just like some rich Middle Eastern oil baron that came in and was able to just drop enormous amounts of money into the team to make it better, but that came at the cost of losing what Arsenal is or should be. We've already seen what that looks like, and it doesn't sit well with most fans. We don't get to choose who the owners are, but I think you'd be fighting a losing battle if to try to win back the goodwill of the fans if you didn't take into consideration what Arsenal is at its best. It's not just about bringing in the best players, it's about bringing in the right players who embody something that fans talk about and maybe can't even put their finger on, but it's something we all agree needs to be there because we know it when we see it and we know it when it's not there. Those players that don't have it are usually the ones that move on quickly. The ones like Kieran Tierney, for example. That guy's got Arsenal in him. Whether he grew up being a Celtic fan or not, you can see the way that he plays that embodies what Arsenal is about. An owner should certainly either embrace that and try to understand it. Um, it's just not something that can be ignored. It's not something that can be glossed over. It's not something that can be paid for, and it's not something that we can um, let go of. I think it's really important that we as fans continue to push for reform and change and do what we can, because clearly the fans' voices have an impact. We've seen by how this turned around in 48 hours from the uproar that fans created. Um, More so than even players, I think it was really about the fans, because the players at the end of the day have to do whatever, they're under contract, but we are not. We get to
Yeah.
choose whether we follow this team or another team or no teams. So anybody who comes in after the Cronkies has to understand that and has to learn from their mistakes. I would hope, I would think that not there's no level of money that can just fix that. That part has to be uh, primary to whatever happens next.
Yeah, and I think, and you mentioned it, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the idea that fans do have power. I think sometimes we forget that. We think like, oh, this is inevitable. This movement towards hyper capitalism and hyper, like, teams just being money printing machines for the owners, and like it's all about the bottom dollar, and it's all about paying the best players to do it. But us as fans, we do have a role in it, and if we do stay collective, and it doesn't have to be an uproar about everything. And I do try and keep everything in perspective. It's like, like with the whole Zool thing, sometimes it was, upsetting as a fan and everything, but I wasn't like, going, saying, go to the street, flip over cars and set them on fire. But I think with important things, we have to realize that we do have a voice, and we do have a way of saying that, this is our club more than it is this owner who comes in. This is who we are, and we have a voice. And if we unite in that, it will be listened to. Obviously, this is a greatest example of it being listened to. I don't think any of the clubs that tried to start this Super League thought that the fans were going to actually come up and do what they did.
Well, I think that's a good place to stop for the moment. We're not going to stop talking about this, but we are going to take a little break. And there's a couple things I want to do when we come back. So one of them is our first ever voicemail. And
I'm
Tim doesn't
excited
know
about
about
that.
this second part because I didn't put it in our outline here.
Ooh.
But I'm gonna throw a
Do we
curveball
keep
in.
it?
I'm gonna have Tim
Oh,
read the open letter from Arsenal, and I'm gonna
oh.
use my bullshit translator, and we're gonna read through some of this and figure out what they're really trying to say.
Oh God.
All right, so when we come back, lots to look forward to. So join us on the other side of the break. All right, welcome back from the break, and we're gonna go right into the BS meter. Yeah, um, Arsenal Arsenal put out an open letter in response to leaving the European Super League here, and really had no communication leading up to this outside of saying we're part of it, we're a founding member, and then radio silence for 48 hours as things fell apart around them. Um, the letter and tweet that went along with it was I think, the only team to really outright apologize for their role in this. Um, and I don't know if I give them any extra bonus points for apologizing because it doesn't really change much. Um,
It's better than nothing, to be honest. But
I I suppose. Uh, but I read this letter, and it really did not ring true to me. So Tim is going to read this letter, and I'm going to try to translate what I thought they were actually saying.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
The last few days have shown us yet again the depth of feeling our supporters around the world have for this great club and the game we love.
We had no idea that any of our fans cared about what we did with the club.
Needed no reminding of this, but the response from supporters in recent days has given us time for further reflection and deep thought.
You have forced our hand, and we really forgot you were there because our stadium's been empty. If you're not paying us money, we forget you're around.
It was never our intention to cause such distress. However, when the invitation to join the Super League came, while knowing there were no guarantees, we did not want to be left behind to ensure we protected Arsenal and its future.
We can't just sit around while other people are making money. This has to be our money too.
As a result of listening to you and the wider football community over recent days, we are withdrawing from the proposed Super League. We made a mistake and we apologize for it.
We got busted with our hand in the cookie jar, and this is the only way out.
We know it will take time to restore your faith in what we are trying to achieve here at Arsenal. But let us be clear that the decision to be part of the Super League was driven by our desire to protect Arsenal, the club you love, and to support the game you love through greater solidarity and financial stability.
We have never cared about these things before, but today we're going to say we care because we still want your money. We still want you to pay us as much as you possibly can.
Stability is essential for the game to prosper, and we will continue to strive to bring the security the game needs to move forward.
What if we changed the rules so that we could all make more money? As a matter of fact, what if we created our own. Wait. We're apologizing for that. Moving on.
The system needs to be fixed. We must work together to find solutions which protect the future of the game and harness the extraordinary power football has to get us on the edge of our seats.
Hear us out. What if we did the Champions League, but everybody got to stay in it forever? At least 20 years.
Finally, we know this has been hugely unsettling at the end of what has been an incredibly difficult year for us all.
We don't give a fuck about you guys. Seriously. COVID, that's nothing. That is nothing. We've got way more tricks up our sleeves if you just let us keep going.
Our aim is to always make the right decisions for the great football club, to protect it for the future, and to take us forward. We didn't make the right decision here, which we fully accept.
Oh God, these people. Um, our aim is to always make the right decisions for this football club. That fuck, God damn it, these people. Yeah, it's just it's all complete bullshit. I mean, I don't even know what to say to that. It is just we didn't make the right decisions here, which we fully accept. No shit, no shit. I mean, come on. I don't even know how to translate that. I can't even take it seriously in the first place.
I loved your fuck shit. I think that's the best translation.
Okay.
And finally, we have heard you, the Arsenal board.
God, you caught us. I mean, seriously, you caught us. How dare you? We heard that you caught us, and we need backed away quickly and quietly. We are going to try to do the exact same thing again in 6 months.
It is so much bullshit.
It really is. I mean, I appreciate that they went so far as to apologize, but this is it does not ring of anything genuine. And it just really exemplifies the disconnect between ownership and the fans, because none of
Uh,
this speaks to the fans. Not really. I don't feel any connection to these words on a page. This feels like I'm sorry you feel bad, or I'm sorry that you took offense to what we were trying to do, but we were doing it for your best interest. Like
I think,
it was presented as a money grab, and you're trying to act like it wasn't. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
and I think not to. I know we're trying to move on from this discussion a little bit, but it's kind of hard. But I think one of the things that was galling is just how cowardly the Arsenal decision makers were about this. The fact that we didn't see any of the Arsenal, we saw a tweet and we saw the statement. We didn't see any of the Arsenal board. We didn't see any Kroenke's talk about this, or at least own up to it. Like I have a lot more respect for Florentino Perez, to be honest, because at least he's like, yeah, we're doing this. Talk to me. This is what's happening. Arsenal is like, hey, we're just gonna pretend this is like gonna blow over, and then hopefully, we don't have to take the consequences.
God, it's again, it's embarrassing how poorly this was dealt with by the group of 12 teams, and on an individual team level. I don't think any team did it correctly. Um, and how could you? You were inept enough to do it this way in the first place. It's no surprise that you're just screwing up the dismount. Like, you cannot stick the landing on this one.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. So glad we talked about that letter, because that was the cherry on the shit cake today. Um, Forgive all my cursing, but this just pisses me off.
no. I generally try not to swear too much. I've been told that I swear too much in general, but on this podcast, I try and present a professional
I am
face. But
very,
this
I'm as professional as this team is, this ownership group.
but this day and this subject just makes me very sweary. It actually makes me angry. So,
Yeah, I mean, how can you not? We clearly care about it enough to talk about this team every week, and
hmm
it's so annoying how flippant, I think, is the word I'm looking for.
yeah,
Um, this has all been dealt with in pretty much the worst way possible. It's as if none of these teams have a PR department.
I, I at the end of the day, it just keeps on coming back to like these quotes. I don't think they were intelligent people. I think, and just more, I think they're just people that thought they could just force their way. I mean, we're familiar with this in the United States with certain people. I'm not going to get too far into it, but certain people that think that they can just do whatever they want and there's no consequences, and not only do whatever they want, but they'll get their way in the end. And I think this is a great example of that type of personality.
Or just the idea that money will fix everything. That
hmm
no, there's nothing money can't fix. That yeah, it's ah, I I think that it rears its ugly head so much recently, and it happens in all different facets of life. But to have it come home and really just screw up something I hold so dearly, it's just really frustrating.
Yeah, I'd much rather just be talking about goals and player performance and fun passing triangles and like how awesome party is and things like that. I'd rather I'd rather be having those discussions. They make me much more happy
Yeah,
than having to talk about this type of subject. And I and soccer for a large part this year, which has not been a great year for me in a lot of ways, has been a great escape. And it's just like it throws its head in as like an ugly part, and I'm like, where can I escape to now?
right.
Like, you know?
Yeah, I will still watch the game on Friday, and I will try to be a fan still, and care about the games, but I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop, because this could all be invalidated. It could be points deductions. It could be many different things. We don't know yet, but um, all of our effort as fans could be for naught because of these poor decisions, and that will just really piss me off at the end of the day.
It's just like this is going to go far afield, but I have a friend who follows Finnish football. He's a Finnish guy, and his team was in the Champions League one day. It's Tampere United, and I follow them. I'm actually a member of their club. But during the early 2000s, their owner was caught betting and throwing games, and what happened is their entire club got disbanded. Not because the fans did anything wrong, not
Mm.
because the players did anything wrong, but because the owner was a just a horrible cheat, and they had to like dissolve the club and start back at the bottom of the Finnish football period. So they were in the seventh tier of Finnish soccer, which sounds as exciting as you can imagine.
Who knew there were seven
And I
tiers of
mean,
Finnish soccer?
yeah,
The seven circles of hell.
and I mean they've worked their way back up to where they're now in the fourth
Mm.
division again, which is cool. I mean that's the joy of competitive soccer, which you can work your way back up as opposed to being in a frozen league. But you know, I in talking to them, like they're never probably going to get to the top again because there's a level that they can't, you know, they can't afford to pay players professional. The barrier between professional and amateur is right at that level, and they just don't have the funds to do it, and it sucks. You had a team that played in the Champions League, and because of the owner's stupid mistake, they no longer will be a professional club. You know,
It doesn't. One only has to look at like Leeds or some of these other. There's other clubs out there that have had glory days and have fallen on hard times. It is not hard to imagine Arsenal is teetering on heading down that path. So this does not help. It
yeah.
does not help rebuild the image. It does not help build anything for the future. So all this crap about doing this in the best interest of Arsenal does not ring true at all.
I mean, imagine trying to get like we were already going to have a hard time signing Odegaard. Do you think Odegaard wants to stick around for this?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, his home
You know,
club did the same thing, so I mean, it's not like he's running back to
yeah,
the squeaky clean hands of Real Madrid. Everybody's got blood on their hands in this thing.
yeah, but he'll go back to yeah. A lot of players think teams do, but
Yeah.
you know, there's always Bayern.
Uh, yep. All right. We actually got a voicemail from
So excited about
from
this.
Joe Robinson, which we will listen to right now.
Hi, gents. It's Joe Robinson here. I thought with all of the excitement of the last sort of 48 hours, I will ask what has been Arsenal's greatest turnaround ever, or second greatest if you include backing out of the Super League?
All right. So Arsenal's biggest turnaround. I don't. He left it very ambiguous, so I'm not sure how he wants us to take that. But I think uh, we take it as we will. What do you think Arsenal's biggest turnaround is?
I could go down this negative wormhole we're going through right now, but since we've been very negative this entire episode, I wanted to go to a positive place. So I decided to take it as Arsenal's biggest comeback, or not necessarily biggest comeback, but my favorite Arsenal comeback. And it was in 2008, and it was Arsenal 3, Bolton 2. And I remember watching this game again at the Georgian Dragon. Is it still around? Is it still in Seattle? Still open? I hope it
I
is.
don't know anymore. I don't know what's open anymore.
But once upon a time, I was the only place to watch soccer in Seattle, and yeah, the game. I remember watching the game live there, and it did not go well with Bolton getting a goal. Arsenal Diaby, good old Diaby. You remember him getting
I do.
a red card, and then Bolton getting a second goal, and Arsenal 2 goals down and a man down, and then some very classic names helped us get out of that, and that'd be William Gallas. Do you remember William Gallas?
I do.
Robin van Persie. Do you remember Robin
Oh
van Persie? He
yes.
was on your list of players of the decade, I believe.
He is still he's still a pretty good player. in my mind,
And then
despite some other
yeah,
things.
and he that was when I remember loving the crap out of Robin van Persie after this game. And then also a little player we may remember called Cesc Fabregas getting a deflected goal to go ahead in the 90th minute. I think it got actually called as an own goal now that I'm thinking about it, but it was a shot by Cesc Fabregas, who will never die in my heart, and I love that man still to this day. And yeah, and I just remember going from that, like, that lowest of a low, 2 goals down and a man down, to that 90th minute winner. Like that is what soccer is all about. That is what Arsenal's all about. And like, just even thinking back on those names, they're just they're such good names to remember. Even William Gallas, who wasn't necessarily my favorite player of all time, but it was just like, oh yeah, I remember when he played for us. That's it.
Uh huh.
Yeah, that is why I follow this team and watch that team or games like that. And yeah, so thank you for bringing me down that memory lane. That definitely has brightened up the podcast for me.
Yeah, I think for me, just going off a recent memory, one of the biggest turnarounds I think was um, finding a way into the Europa League for this season by winning the FA Cup last year. Because considering um, all of the odds that were against a new coach coming in mid-season, um, dealing with a COVID pandemic, and somehow getting the team to play some pretty big clubs and find their way through this tournament and win the FA Cup at the end of the year to as a last gasp to get us into European soccer. It was really unbelievable. It kind of felt like a little bit of a mini movie, a a Hallmark movie, a TV movie, but a decent, entertaining movie nonetheless. Um, but the fact that Arteta was able to do that, the fact that this team was able to rally and beat some big clubs, and it wasn't one game; it was a series of games that really fell in their favor, and um, in with everything going on, it was a much needed victory for fans who we were all pretty down and needed some aspect of hope to cling to, because it would have been pretty dark days if it would have just fizzled and we would have had no Europa League this year, because that right now that's the only thing we can cling to once again is finding a way to get out of Europa League. And um, who knows where we stand in that at the moment, but um, assuming things go forward as planned, um, getting to play in the semifinal of the Europa League and hopefully beyond would be a little bit of a make good on a pretty mediocre season that has just gotten much worse in my mind with all this extra stuff. So they need something to give us hope going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a good memory, and unlike or I'm sure certain other teams in the North London area don't really understand this, but winning trophies actually does feel really good.
It makes a lot of stuff much better.
Yeah, and yeah, so that this it's nice to end this show on a positive, because there is a lot of negative things going on, and the season has not been easy for any of us. But it's nice to remember the good time, and it's nice to remember like a good time that was not that long ago, less than a little less than a year ago now. You know?
Yep. Well, we've got um, a game this weekend. Well, this week we play Everton on Friday, and then next week we will reconvene for the podcast before we head into the first leg of Villarreal on Thursday. So we'll see you before that game. But um, I think quick note on Everton. I I'm not like too crazy about Premier League right at the moment, especially after dropping points to Fulham, but it'd be nice to beat Everton. It'd be nice to come back and win a game after all this crap this week.
It would be nice. I mean, Everton looks good. I saw their last performance. They do have a team. There's some. It'd be an interesting debate. Maybe we can have for next week, because I know we're trying to close it up, about whether their coach should be our coach as opposed to Arteta.
Yes.
But we'll see coming through. I think they're well coached. I think they have some talent. Walcott's probably going to score against us because that's just what happens. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, a win would put us even on points with Everton, so moving in a positive direction. But we've still got a long ways to go to get anywhere close to sixth place. I think would be the long shot at the
I'm
moment.
really
But
not worried about the league right now. It's so far
I
down.
I don't see us. I think right now I just want to beat Tottenham, who's sitting in seventh. So
Although there is some funny ramifications if we do, and this is a long shot and a long way away, but if we do win Champions League spot through UEFA League, that does ripple through a little bit of the Premier League and the spots that are allocated. So it could be some interesting things that happen that way.
Very interesting. Well, we don't want to get too far ahead here, so let's play this Everton game, and then we'll talk next week about how that went and where we're going with Villarreal. So the Emery conversation will be had next episode.
Indeed.
Assuming we're still in the Europa League. That's just
I'm gonna break down. Let's not go down that way.
Let's not count on anything yet. Okay, no fantasy this week, so let's get right to the end here. Thank you all for listening and hearing us rant and curse and just get it all out, because it's been a tough one, but hopefully this was cathartic for those of you who stuck through the whole thing, and hopefully you feel a little bit better and not worse. I don't know.
I feel better, so
forget my comments about not being in Europa League or anything like that. If you have not subscribed to this podcast, there's multiple ways to do so, but pretty easy to go to Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast, and hit that subscribe button. If you've done that already, leave us a review and let everybody know what you think about the podcast. That would be a huge help in getting the word out. And if you haven't done so already, we do have a YouTube channel where we occasionally, we post the audio, and occasionally we'll post the video as well, trying to be consistent about posting something every week. So if you haven't checked that out and subscribed over there, that's another way to access the podcast, and huge help if you already get the podcast elsewhere. Just go over and subscribe and like our videos. That would be helpful in helping us grow that channel as well. If you would like to email us with your questions, westofnorthlondon@gmail.com is where you can send those. And Twitter is @WofNLondon. And if you want to be like Joe Robinson and send us a voicemail, you can go to our Anchor page, anchor.fm/westofnorthlondon, and there will be a button there to send us a message, a voicemail, and we will add it into our next episode or whenever you send it, and hopefully we can get some more of those, because that's really cool and we'd like to hear from you guys. If you like the theme song, we have to thank Bobcat for creating that for us. bobc.at is where you can find their website. It's a .at, not a .com, so don't get confused if you go to bobcat.com and it's not the band.
I wonder what's on that. I am gonna have to look and see what's on bobcat.com.
I'm wondering if it's like the forklifts and stuff, isn't it? Bobcats.
Oh, yeah.
I think that that's what they make.
I'm typing it in now and hoping it's not porn. It is that. You are correct.
I thought you were saying it is porn.
No.
That was my first reaction.
no, it is.
And then I was wondering what kind of that would Never mind. So go to bobc.at. Check out the band, not the bobcat.com, where you can find large equipment for your work site needs.
Are they paying us?
They are now. They are now our sponsor. So that's it for us this week. And as always,
See you at the next gun show.